So what do you think of all these formal meeting rules, parliamentary procedure, and rules of order? Are they outdated? Are they too constrictive? Do they get in the way of getting things done? Is it time to reconsider Robert's Rules of Order? That's the question we're going to ask in this episode of Point of Order. So stick around. So, I came across an interesting article the other day from 2021. It was titled Reconsidering Robert's Rules of Order. Now, you know that with a title like that, I'm going to want to dig in and see what it is that they have to say. It was published by a blog, CharityLawyer, and they describe their blog as offering plain language explanations of complex nonprofit law concepts, discussions of current events, and links to valuable resources for nonprofits. Now, of course, I will share a link in the description box below, and I would also recommend just visiting their main site, especially if you are an American non-for-profit organization. They have some very specific advice columns that look quite helpful and quite interesting. And for a more general audience, there are certainly very interesting topics like the one that we're going to talk about in this video. Okay, so let's get right into the point of order being made here. A better approach for most nonprofits is to reference Robert's Rules as a guideline rather than a requirement, or better still, leave it out altogether. This is a really well-written, well-structured article with some good points being made. And what I'm going to do is take those points and we'll walk through one by one. You're going to see me reference my notes quite a bit because I'd like to make sure that the arguments the authors are making are accurate and that I don't forget any of the thoughts I have on these arguments. So, with that, we're going to move into the first section of the article. So the first part of this article, it's a really high-level overview of where Robert's Rules came from, kind of the historical development of it coming from use in, say, Parliament and Congress to being used for organizations over, since the late 19th century. No real commentary for me on this section, except to say that if you are interested in the development of parliamentary procedure over time, historical pieces of interest, absolutely pop on over to Parliamentary Inquiry series that I have here on the channel and check out some of those videos because we dive deep into some of the historical developments of parliamentary procedure, not just Robert's Rules of Order. So having gone over where Robert's Rules came from, we get into the first of a few arguments here. And the main argument is introduced by stating, while an agreed upon procedural framework can help meetings run more smoothly and ensure proper decision making, Robert's Rules is not the only choice and might not be the right choice for your non-for-profit. And there's two different assertions being made here, and I just want to talk about the second one first. And the authors are exactly right. Robert's Rules may not be the right choice for your organization. There are a number of procedure manuals out there that you can choose from. And it's very helpful to choose the one that fits for you and for your organizations. You know, I talk about this over in the monthly grind in my video, Your Meetings Need a Map. And I would encourage you to go over and check that video out. I do believe that a procedural framework in general is necessary when it comes to group decision making. It's not a nice to have, it's a need to have, because for me it comes down to this, and here's my counter argument. If you don't agree to a set of transparent and written rules that people in your group can see, access, and understand, then invisible rules and conventions will take over and become hidden deep inside of, this is the way we do things around here. I mean, how often have you heard that argument from folks who have been around for a while? This is just the way things are done. And how often does that lead to something good? Right. So all parliamentary authorities are trying to do is to strike a balance between the rights of the individual in the group and the rights of the group as a decision-making body to be able to move business forwards while still respecting the right of individuals to contribute. Absolutely. Go over to the monthly grind, check out my video about balance. It's called A Question of Balance. And it goes into my thoughts on why we have procedural authorities in the first place, and stripping away all the fancy language and rules, what they are actually trying to achieve. So, you know, whether you're looking at a pre-written parliamentary authority or rule manual, writing your own procedural rules, or exploring other frameworks for group decision making, my argument would be to make sure that you have something documented that strives for balance and fairness, but is transparent and can be referenced by all current and potential members, so that they know what the rules of engagement are. They understand the rules of the game, they understand how business is conducted, and how members interact with each other. I mean, they're gonna wanna know that from the outset, and if things are gonna turn into a situation where it's not working great, they're also gonna want to know how to change the rules of engagement to better suit their organization. So we've looked at where Robert's Rules comes from, and we've asked the question, should you even be using Robert's Rules of Order? And now we're on to problem number one that they've identified, and that is that Robert's Rules of Order is cumbersome and confusing. Here are some of the examples. It's big. It's around 700 pages. Using all of the official rules is impractical. The standard order of business groups routine matters before critical new business, and adherence to Robert's Rules results in an uneven balance of power if some members know more about the rules than others. Now, first of all, absolutely 1000%, Robert's Rules of Order specifically is very large. It's big, it's dense, it's boring, and it can be confusing. Absolutely. And this ties into the next point that's being made, that using all of the official rules is impractical. And that's absolutely also true. But I don't think that's the point. I'm not sure that that's how Robert's Rule is meant to be used. Stay with me for a second. The manual is published for the widest audience of group decision-making bodies available, right? Not every group will have or need an executive committee or be able to hold conventions. because the audience, again, is the widest variation of group decision-making bodies possible, from the smallest boards to the largest assemblies. Many local governments use this as a procedural manual. So you have a very diverse set of decision-making groups. So I think that the manual is written to cover all of these different variations. Because, like I said, you may not need an executive committee in your organization, but if you start to scale up and find that you do, Robert's Rules of Order has some procedural guidelines for how to institute this and how to do business using these things. Same with a seemingly obscure motion like objection to the consideration of a question, or fix the time to which to adjourn, or a renewal. Like, what are these motions? Side note, pop over to Parliamentary Inquiry and you will find out what all of these motions are. But when the time comes and you want to leverage one of these more obscure pieces of procedure, it is nice to have a reference that you can go to. Or at least I think it's nice to have a reference that you can go to. Now, with regard to what items of business happen when, all parliamentary authorities, including Robert's Rules, operate under the principle that the group determines exactly how to structure business for itself. As long as it conforms to any applicable laws, it's the group itself that has the right to structure their order of business. The parliamentary authorities provide a template, a starting point. Groups can alter their agenda and alter their order of business in temporary and in permanent ways. And I've got a few videos that talk about agenda management, about structure of order of business, and in fact, one that speaks to what the difference between an order of business and an agenda is. So check out those videos when you have time. It's not difficult to structure your business in a way that suits you. Finally, balance of power. Okay, sure. Some members could use their knowledge of Robert's Rules to steer decision-making one way or the other. But this is a feature of group decision-making and with humans. So it's not isolated to Robert's Rules of Order. Some people will want to dominate the decision-making process, and some will want to talk at great lengths. Others are going to be naturally quiet. Some will push for quick decisions, and some people will want unanimity. Like, to say that simply by having assigned Robert's Rules of Order as your procedural manual and your reference point, that some people will read it and others will not. I guess let me articulate my opinion on this. And it will always be, if the agreements for how we act with each other aren't clear and stable for all current and future members, we risk confusion, we risk frustration, and we risk worse. The balance that each group arrives at might be slightly different, but it needs to be transparent and understood and accessible by all. We can't be scared away from using agreements with how we will interact with each other by the fact that some humans are going to interact slightly different. Some humans are going to read the rules and understand the rules and may leverage it to their advantage, while others will just simply refuse to read the rules and understand the rules. That's not a flaw in the system. That's actually a feature. It's a human group who comes together to make decisions. There's going to be the human element involved. And again, not a flaw, but absolutely a feature. So I don't think that having a procedure manual or a group of agreements is a negative in and of itself. Okay, problem number 2. Robert's rules may conflict with bylaws of the organization or state laws. This is articulated as a 2-part problem, the first part being the existence of state laws and the fact that there will inevitably be a conflict or conflicts between what a state law might say on a specific subject versus what Robert's Rules of Order might say. The second part is the assertion that unless one of your board members is a lawyer, and this is a quote, unless one of your board members is a lawyer with intimate knowledge of state nonprofit rules, figuring out what prevails in a case of conflict can be daunting. That's the quote there. I'm going to be honest with you. It feels like a straw argument here to me somehow. Before I go any further, I need to say this, and here's what I need to say. The job of interpreting laws professionally is entirely done within the scope of the legal profession. It doesn't matter how many pages there are in Robert's Rules of Order. It doesn't matter how many pages are in the Standard Code. It doesn't matter if you don't have a procedural manual. There are still going to be state and provincial and national laws that may apply to your organization. And if you're looking at provincial, state, federal laws, in order to get a professional legal opinion, you need to talk to a legal professional or a lawyer. So let's get that straw argument out of the way right off the top. Whether Robert's Rules is long or confusing, interpreting state, provincial, federal laws will require a professional legal opinion from someone. The author seemed actually surprised that it would be possible that Robert's Rules would even acknowledge the likelihood that there could be a possible conflict between what's in the rule manual and what's in the laws of your state or province. And that kind of surprises me because we talked about this before. Robert's Rules sets out a whole suite of parliamentary procedural rules and guidelines for the widest audience possible. So of course, there are going to be moments where what Robert's Rules says isn't applicable to your organization or conflicts with the laws in the state or the province where your organization is and where you live. Of course, the authors know that, and they give remedies. They talk about the hierarchy of rules, and if rules come in conflict with laws, what do you do? If rules come in conflict with bylaws, what do you do? And if bylaws and laws don't agree, what do you do? And it all comes down to the hierarchy of rules. And do I have a video for that? You betcha. I definitely have a video that talks about the hierarchy of rules. Check it out elsewhere on this channel. And I'll probably drop a link in the description. Next problem. Following Robert's Rules of Order opens you up to challenges on technicalities. So listen. If your organization doesn't follow an established and transparent set of procedures, no matter what they are, if you're just constantly winging it, you've opened yourself up to challenges on technicalities. And in my opinion, you've opened yourself up to more challenges on technicalities and on fairness and transparency. Here's a quote from the article. Unless you fully understand and apply Robert's Rules of Order in their entirety, your board opens the door to those who would challenge their actions on a technicality. Again, I would disagree. And I keep going back to that the authors of not just Robert's Rules of Order, but many of the more popular rule manuals out there, like the Standard Code, Bourneau's Rules of Order, things like that. They're writing for the broadest possible audience so that the maximum number of group decision-making bodies will be able to use their rule manual. You may not have the same needs as an elected local government body. And if you're watching this and you're in a local government, you definitely would not have to follow the same provisions for a small board. You would have some things that would be very specific to your needs. But fundamentally, the rules are there to find balance and fairness, and if they're not being followed, you should absolutely have options, and you do. In the moment, you can certainly call a point of order if you feel that the rules are being unfairly or improperly applied on any aspect of the decision-making process. And afterwards, on looking back, if you think that there was a lack of procedural fairness arriving at the decision, you should be and are able to challenge based on the process that was or wasn't followed. And here's the final problem as articulated by the author, that Robert's Rules of Order is out of touch with modern norms. Specifically, the model is outdated and out of sync with today's business practice. This is, for me, the most compelling argument in this entire article. And I think it's worth exploring. I mean, the original Robert's Rules of Order was written in the late 1800s. It was updated from time to time, but not quickly. Lots of space between new revisions. Not only was it written in the late 1800s, it was based on group decision-making that evolved from the Westminster parliamentarian system that goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. Side note, check out my channel, Parliamentary Inquiry, and you'll see some videos on those developments in parliamentary history. It's entirely based on Western European structures with North American flavors. And I do think that is a limiting approach. It limits the tools that groups could use for decision making if we're only focusing on one tradition, one history, and one set of practices. But the authors then go on to recommend the consensus and collaboration model. Now, I'm going to fully admit, I know as close to nothing about the model that they're talking about, but this is one thing that I want to learn about. And so if you have resources and thoughts on what they're calling the consensus and collaboration model, please drop them down in the comments. Send me some homework. Here's how they describe the model, though. In this model, an idea or proposal is introduced for discussion, amended as needed, and consensus is sought before taking a vote. This describes traditional procedural rules. An idea or proposal is introduced for discussion. That's your main motion. Check out my other videos on how to get a main motion on the floor for discussion. It's then amended as needed, and literally That's the motion used under traditional procedural practices to alter an existing proposal, amendments. And then consensus is sought before taking a vote. So to me, this describes traditional procedure, but seems to remove any of the protections for dissent and for minority opinion. This reads, on its surface, like groupthink before a vote. I'm not okay with that, personally, but if you are, let's hear your thoughts down in the comments below. I absolutely want to learn more about alternative procedural frameworks. So send me off in the right direction. Tell me what you know. Show me some models. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about the pros and the cons of non-Western European-based decision making. So now, based on the problems that we've just discussed, the author ends with some best practices for non-profit board meetings. The first one is, before you decide to adopt Robert's Rules of Order, do your homework. Review and gain some understanding of what you might be getting into. And I might add here, look carefully at alternatives while you're doing your homework. Robert's Rules of Order is not the only parliamentary procedural rulebook or framework. We talk about the Standard Code and Bourneau's Rules of Order on this channel specifically, and there certainly are other manuals out there that you can adopt as your procedural framework. I like this quote in the article. I like this one a lot. Consider how you approach decision-making and conflict resolution and whether Robert's Rules is truly the best fit for your organization. That advice is just so valuable. The next best practice that we look at is the advice that if you do decide to use Robert's Rules of Order, and I would add, whatever procedural framework that you choose to adopt, beware of your provincial and state laws. Remember, we keep going back to this. Robert's Rules of Order and all the procedural manuals are written for the widest possible audience to be able to get value from and use. But there are and will be provincial, state, and federal laws that apply to not just your organization, but the industry or field that your organization operates in, and they guide specific activities related to governance. So you do need to be aware of your provincial, state, and federal laws as they apply to you. Understand how those may or may not come into conflict with some of the procedural and decision-making guidelines and rules in the parliamentary procedural authority that you choose, and use tools like standing rules of order or your bylaws to make sure that those two things don't come into conflict. And finally, take steps to educate all of your members on the rules. Take care to apply these rules consistently and fairly. So now we're at the final summary of the article, and this is where we find the original point of order. That a better approach for most nonprofits is to reference Robert's Rules as a guideline rather than a requirement, or better still, leave it out altogether. And just based on the discussion that we've just had, I think I'm ready to make a ruling. My ruling on this point of order that suggests that Robert's Rules of Order should be a guideline rather than a requirement, or better still, don't use a rule book or procedural framework. I find that the point of order is not well taken as argued in that way. I find that There are a number of points that the author makes that are very well taken. I really appreciate the thought and consideration that has gone into this argument, but I don't believe that the conclusion lines up with the problems that are addressed. So absolutely, is Robert's Rules of Order based on a very Western European parliamentary tradition with North American flavor? Yeah. Is that a problem? Kind of. It ignores other lenses, it ignores other decision-making traditions, it ignores other ways to come at the question of how to balance the rights of the organization to make decisions and to move business forward with the rights of individuals to contribute, to disagree, and to work together to make good decisions. So it's limiting in that aspect. The revision cycle of Robert's Rules of Order isn't quick. It values stability over reactivity. Is that good? Is that bad? I'm not sure I'm willing to make a ruling on that in this video. Are there other ways to approach group decision making? Yes, there certainly are. And this is my call to action to you, because I am very limited in what I know outside of Robert's Rules of Order or legislative procedures from the Western European tradition. I'm very limited in my understanding of what a consensus and consultative approach may look. Great words, as it's described in the article. It seems very similar, so I don't understand the value of choosing that over this. And I would like to learn. So please, send me off in all directions. Send me your resources, your links, your thoughts. Drop them down in the comments. I'm really looking forward to exploring alternatives and having these conversations with you over time. Thanks for watching. This has been a really great article. Check it out, link down below, and look forward to our next video in the Point of Order series. All right, meeting adjourned for this episode of Point of Order. If you have questions or comments, please drop them below. If you're looking for short form breakdowns of motions and procedural issues, check out Order of Business. For long form content around historic developments in parliamentary procedure and deep dives into specific motions, Parliamentary Inquiry is where you want to go. And the series, The Monthly Grind, is there to give you ideas and insight into how to make your meetings more effective. For now, why don't you check out one of these two videos here and here, and I will see you next time.